Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are. Hosted by Desiree Duffy.
We're talking about books that make you frightened. You know, the ones that are haunting and scary. Ones that evoke fear. Fear, after all, is one of the great motivators. It has to be. I mean, it's what keeps us alive. We feel, you ever notice this? It's like we feel more alive when we're afraid. And it's because our existence depends on it. We get blood rushing and adrenaline starts flowing, and it can almost feel good in a twisted sort of way. And there are those among us who enjoy allowing ourselves to be fed fear, almost like a junkie wanting drugs. We tend to be a bit reactive when we're afraid, and we tend to flock together for support and comfort, like sheep herding together to find protection from the wolves stalking them. Whether the monsters are real or not doesn't matter. Many people are easily manipulated by fear, and that's what matters. That, my friends, is what's truly terrifying. When we read a book that makes us afraid, we need to ask ourselves, why? Why does the monster in the book frighten us? What does it represent? Do we like scary books because it gives us a mechanism to fight metaphorical monsters? Author Mike Robinson, he knows a thing or two about monsters and fear. More cerebral than typical horror authors, Mike is the writer of books that tend to be more literary and psychological. Thrillers with subtext that slice into the core of human existence. Mike is the author of Skunk Ape Semester, The Prince of Earth, Dreamshores, and the Enigma of Twilight Falls trilogy, plus many, many more. And he's also a screenwriter and an editor, and he is with us today on Books That Make You. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you here. Now, can we start by, I want to allow you to describe your writing, because I don't feel you fit easily into some of the typical genre descriptions. Can you tell us about your writing style and what you do when you're crafting a book?
It's often sort of difficult to describe my approach or my style, but I tend to use the shorthand of saying, imagine throwing, say, Clive Barker, James Joyce, Harlan Ellison, Doris Lessing, Ray Bradbury, and probably any other number of Herman Hesse's another big influence. Any of those authors who kind of tread on the darker edges of the human psyche, throwing them in a blender, and I'm kind of what popped out.
So you're kind of like a Frankenstein monster of writers.
Yeah. I used to read almost exclusively horror fiction, Stephen King and Richard Matheson and those guys years back. And then as I was getting more and more serious about writing professionally, I realized that I needed to be a lot more omnivorous in my literary diet, in my reading diet. So I just started devouring some of the books that I'd always been kind of wary of approaching, just because, of their reputation, their big, long classical tomes. But I immediately, once I sunk my teeth into them, I immediately just devoured them, and they become kind of part of my palette, the arsenal that I draw from in terms of style, in terms of just psychoanalytical approach to certain characters, in terms of philosophy, in terms of subtext. So I am kind of a strange blend, and I try to be a little bit more, not to sound arrogant, but I tried to bring a more literary kind of modernist approach, I guess, to commercial horror and commercial science fiction and contemporary fantasy.
And you definitely succeed in that. That's one of the things that I find especially striking about your writing. You're welcome. And I can't help but notice all of the allusions to food, devour, and some of the words that you're choosing.
Oh, yeah.
Either you're hungry right now, or there's like this carnivorous eating aspect. I mean, let's talk about that if we're going to talk about the metaphors behind the writing. Do you feel that eating, devouring, again, that's something that we equate to what a monster does. How do you feel that theme, I guess, informs your writing?
Well, it's funny that I was using those words because the phrase that I often use when describing just the reading-writing paradigm is one more of respiration. So reading is inhaling and writing is exhaling. And I've met writers who say, well, when I'm in the thick of writing a book or when I want to write something, I don't want to have any outside influences, so I don't read anything, or I don't want to be contaminated. And I just think that's common wisdom is that that's the wrong approach. And, I share that, obviously. And I think you need to be reading as much as you need to be writing. So I guess getting back to the eating metaphor, that's, having a nice varied buffet or trough of things to draw from, not just one genre or one author, but a whole number of things, spanning generations and spanning different styles and personalities is a good thing to have. It can only make you stronger and that much more unique as well.
Sure, exactly.
Because it distinguishes you. Yeah, I mean, you're not just kind of being influenced by one source.
Right. And I think, too, a lot of times authors or writers are afraid that they might inadvertently absorb somebody so much that they're referred to as a hack then, that it become, they start emulating them so much that people think that they're doing it intentionally.
Yeah, there's there are those books that say on the cover, like, in the tradition of so-and-so, say usually a much bigger best-selling author or something. And I always kind of cringe when I see that, because I feel like the author of that particular book is either not being allowed to express themselves or from an external source or from an internal source. They're not. So, I don't know, or both.
Right. Right, exactly.
That's it's a marketing curse, but it's a creative advantage. It's a creative plus, I would say, and I tack towards maybe ideally or idealistically, I tack towards being more creatively fulfilled than financially fulfilled, at least at this moment. So I think that's why I'm braving the longer, harder road of sticking to my guns and telling the stories I kind of want to tell and the way I want to tell them, and trying to cobble together an audience over a longer period of time, which I think will be a more loyal audience than if I were to just do something that is more immediately saleable and hits all the right beats. And all the right familiar beats, I should say, and is quickly forgettable. So I try to make an impact on who I'm writing for. I mean, having 10 people read it and then say it was okay, it was all right, and then they forget about it a week later versus one person who's really affected by it. I'd rather take that one person who's really affected by it.
Mm-hmm. And they're going to become an avid fan of yours, and that's just going to grow because that's striking to the core of your audience.
Exactly.
And the more you hit a core, because it's rather, I shouldn't say easy, but it's easier to write for the masses and to turn out the stuff that people are just expecting time and time again. And that's, a lot of genre fiction, it does that and does that very well, and that's fine. But I understand exactly what you mean in the fact that you want to really strike to the core of the reader that you want to reach.
Right.
Exactly. And you mentioned something earlier, too, when you were talking about the people that inspired you and that you've read. Stephen King was actually a big fan of and read Richard Matheson very religiously. And it's interesting because when I'm talking to the average reader or the average person, a lot of times they might have heard of him. They might remember the movie I Am Legend, and but they don't necessarily always know that that's the case. And I think that's a good example of, you look at Stephen King, one of the world's most prolific horror writers, and how he was able to be inspired by Matheson. And that was okay. And if you go back and you read Matheson, you see it right away how King was inspired by him.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Lovecraft's re-emergence was kind of like that too. All the people that he influenced, like Alan Moore and Stephen King as well, when they would be interviewed about their own influences, they would drop his name, and then I think people started to dig a little bit deeper on who's this Lovecraft that people keep mentioning, and that's how he kind of came back into the light. I think a lot of Matheson's work is filtered through Twilight Zone too, because everyone knows, he's the source of so many of the most famous episodes, like William Shatner, up in the airplane, Nightmare in 20,000 Feet, and seeing a demon on the wing and all that other stuff. And he wrote something. What was the? I'm brain farting. What was the name of the Robin Williams movie where he transgress hell and heaven?
What Dreams May Come?
What Dreams May Come, yes. Yeah. I almost said Something Wicked This Way Comes, but that's Bradbury.
That was your Brad. Yes.
What Dreams May Come, he was the author of that book. So a lot of people know his work, and less people know his name, which is honestly, that would be kind of my ideal situation there. Even though if you're a brand name like Stephen King, you can get away with anything because you're, the genre and the story has ceased to be important. It's taking a backseat to who you are. People just follow the name. Mm-hmm. So there's advantages to that as well.
Very true. Now, can we talk about fear a little bit and how fear plays into your writing? How do you use it? Do you use it to stimulate, to manipulate the reader?
Yeah, I would say I use it sort of as the spice in my stew. I try not to use it cheaply. You can't really have the literary equivalent of a jump scare.
Right.
But even with the movie that I wrote last year, I didn't inject any jump scares. I want the tension and the fear to be sort of probing an area that is a little bit more primal, a little bit more subconscious, that is a little bit more. Well, it's like I want to scratch that area, but I also want it to meet someone at an intellectual level too, at a cerebral level. So things that I lie awake thinking about even as a kid, or just nowadays, when my imagination goes wild and I'm, out in a camping tent or something like that, and I imagine, what if, no one's around me? What if I just suddenly felt a tap on my shoulder in the middle of the night? I mean, that would be really scary and creepy, and it's a very simple scenario, but things like that, and I try to incorporate just the things that unnerve me. I think that's really a word to use, is unnerve. Things that are just slightly off kilter. Because we have a handle on so many things now scientifically, or we think we do. That just presenting a world that is just slightly off base and forever askew and forever evasive of our attempts to tackle it and to define it and shine a light on its full breadth. I think that's really what drives me is just to, in this age of endless technological and scientific innovation, to just kind of continuously remind us how little we know. I mean, a lot of authors and a lot of filmmakers and a lot of artists do that, but it definitely is something that interests me and drives me.
Yes, and our world right now is very scary and frightening to a lot of people.
Exactly.
And it is. The way you described your writing is how many people might describe the world today. Everything feels a little bit off. Things shifted. And politically, socially, we all feel the fear because of that. And, I'm not going to comment either way on, how that, it actually affects us. But I think when we're reading, when we're escaping into a story, whether it's a book or a film or a TV show, that escapism can somehow be a release for us. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I tend to disagree with a lot of people who shy away from more apocalyptically or darker-minded works of art. They say the world's dark enough as it is, and all you have to do is open up the newspaper and blah 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 blah. Well, I think that confronting some of your darker inclinations and fears in an established setting, whether it be a movie theater or in a book, I think really helps you to reconcile yourself to some of your deeper inclinations and deeper impulses, and just not only in yourself but those darker tendencies that exist in the world, and it helps you to deal with them, frankly, and it does me. It's not just a kind of a goth masturbation session where like, oh God, isn't emo session, isn't the world terrible, and just basking in it or indulging in it. It honestly does psychologically help me to deal with the mess that is the world, especially today. So, yeah. That's why I don't exclusively read books or watch movies that are, that take more negative turns, but I think they really are. They're kind of negatively satisfying in a weird way, or sometimes perversely satisfying. They're cathartic in a strange way. And I think a lot of fear-based art and fear-based literature kind of touches the same notes as well. Like you said in the intro, it connects us with a deeper part of ourselves that maybe we've lost touch with or don't want to recognize. I think that's healthy.
Right. Well, I think that part of ourselves is absolutely still there. And I think maybe that's the issue sometimes is we're in denial of that as a society. We don't realize how manipulated and driven we are by fear. And, I can watch other people behave in a fearful manner and just wonder to myself if they see it or not. And
right.
To me, that's scary. They scare me because I know they're reacting out of fear. And, to speak frankly, if they would just kind of chill out a little bit, maybe the world wouldn't be so scary for them because they're making it scary. And there's enough real stuff out there to worry about and to want to affect. I'd rather justly be afraid of climate change and do stuff to impact it and make it better than worry about people who are creating monsters and creating boogeymen for us all to fear and be reactive to.
Yeah, exactly. No, for sure. And I was just going to say, too, that I sometimes wonder if our present state of mental and emotional evolution, or spiritual evolution, for lack of a better term, if we've warranted having something like social media, a giant global watering hole where we can just influence each other moment by moment, day by day, on such a constant and significant and reactive basis. I don't know if it's necessary, if we've gotten to the point where we can handle that yet, but it's here. It's not going away. So we gotta wade through it and work it out somehow.
Yeah. It's like, let's just take a step back. And sometimes I think it's a good thing. You brought up social media. I think it's good to unplug a little bit and escape into a book or do something else to entertain yourself, because if you're addicted to the news and you're addicted to social media, there's a confirmation bias, I think, that forms around you. And you're going to start seeing the world in a very different way. And not only for your health and your wellness and your sanity, but for the benefit of the world, we should all just, hey, take a step back every once in a while and try to put things into perspective.
Oh, completely. Yeah. I keep telling myself I want to go on like a screen diet or something and just, maybe check my phone once a day, or I don't know. It just try to unplug a little bit, as you said.
Yeah. How about, I want to get into monsters a little bit, because you create wonderful, magnificent, scary monsters from the cryptozoology type and Bigfoot, and you've got aliens and more. Can you just talk a little bit about the monsters you create?
With my first published novel, Skunk Semester, that is really a kind of a love letter to all the paranormal reading I did when I was a kid, and I still do. But I say as a kid because I really didn't have to research that book, because a lot of the quote unquote research it was baked into the cake, and I've been doing it for years, and so a lot of the cases in that book were drawn from real cases or real phenomena, I should say. And so I was able to, because it was a novel and loosely based on fact, and in terms of my cross-country expedition and into places of strange repute, and my own interviews with people who've had, say, Bigfoot encounters or know people who've had them, I was able to kind of thickly layer fact with a lot of fiction and bring my own spin to some of the monsters in the cases, and so that was a lot of fun. And my prime interest is, as much as I love the monsters, it's less about explaining the monsters or even showing the monsters necessarily, and more about the human reaction to the monsters. And it's kind of what I touched on earlier, celebrating that dimension of the unknown, and celebrating the fact that there's always going to be shadows that exist around us and things lurking in the shadows, whether it be purely in our psyche or literally out in the physical world, or on some other plane of existence that we can't tap into yet. So I think that's where the literary kind of is married into the genre of fiction, as it were, where my approach is more from the head of the character, human character, reacting to something extraordinary. Because that's one of the things that I get it, because of the sheer demands of storytelling economy in movies. I get why they can't really do this, but I see so many movies where things are normal, and then a monster comes or something extraordinary happens, and then the characters have maybe like 20 seconds to react or reconcile themselves to it, and then it becomes kind of a fact of life that they have to overcome. Mm-hmm. And there's this like whole space. So I want to kind of stretch that 20 seconds down. I'm like, wait a minute, how does seeing this thing, when you say you didn't believe it before or whatever, or the culture tells you it wasn't actually there, blah, 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 how does seeing or encountering this thing kind of shake up your religious viewpoint, if you have one, your scientific viewpoint? You start connecting it to all these different aspects of your life, from your past, what you believe. Everything kind of starts falling through a new sieve, and your whole existence is reworked. That is what really interests me in terms of psychology or approaching psychology as a novelist, and approaching the unknown, really, or horror and science fiction and fantasy. So, and I think a lot of the monsters that I draw from, they're either inspired by or they're directly related to, as you said, cryptozoology fare, or they're like homages to movie monsters, like in Dreamshores. Some of the monsters in there are directly inspired by, say, some of the Ray Harryhausen creatures that were scrambling across movie screens on, the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s. And then there are books like The Prince of Earth where I specifically do not describe what the monster is, because I didn't want to say it was some kind of incubus or angel or demon. I don't want to do any of that. I just wanted something that was beyond explanation. And so I love all the different bases of monsterdom, I think, and I try to cover them all. I like to, if I haven't done something alien related in a while, I want to do that. And if I haven't done something, more earthbound, I want to do that. If I haven't done something more interdimensional, I want to do that. So basically covering the bases of the unseen and the unknown and the ill-defined, and how we deal with that. That's what I love to explore.
Oh, I love that too. And again, that's one of the things I really love about your writing. And again, it's that psychological aspect and the characters. It's character driven. And I think all good storytelling has characters that help define it. A lot of times you get an action adventure film, for example. It's not really character driven. It's just, one car chase after the next. But right. what you're doing within your unique genre that you're kind of playing in is you're really getting into the heads of people, and I think that's what's interesting.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean that's what I am really interested in doing and probing. I also like. I think that's one of the great things about fiction is that, or just fiction in general, that a lot of people who read are obviously it's a clear fact, but I think we, especially nowadays, could use more of, which is just stretching your empathic imagination to encompass other points of view, and safely diving into the head, literally, of someone else and witnessing their thoughts. I mean, it's the only art form where you could really do that. So that's what I really appreciate about it.
Yeah. All right, we've only got a couple of minutes left, believe it or not. That's how fast this went, because, I could talk to you, Mike, all day long about this. This is like 5 shows.
That was a really quick half hour.
I know, right? But I want to give you a chance to tell people what you're working on next, and also let them know where they can find out more about you and find your books, etc.
Okay. So the film that I mentioned earlier is called Blood Corral, and it's kind of a Hitchcockian supernatural mystery drama with elements of a western. That hopefully will be. It's going to be finished next week. We just got the word that it's going to the online editor who's going to tie it all up and into a neat package. So hopefully that will debut in 2019. We're going to be shopping it around for distribution pretty soon. And I just recently finished final revisions on a novel called Walking the Dusk, which is very much a slipstream. It's almost it's funny because it's almost self-consciously slipstream, even though I wasn't consciously making it that. But it's really has elements of straight up horror, it has elements of straight up science fiction, and it has elements of straight up fantasy. And I've been working on that for a couple of years, and hopefully people will agree that they all blend together pretty well. I think they do. But that's going to be making its rounds for hopeful publication soon. And you can find me at www.mike-robinson-author. That's all one word, robinsonauthor.com. And I have 8 other books available now, and including the one you mentioned, the trilogy you mentioned, in Enigma of Twilight Falls, which leads into, it's kind of the hub of a lot of other books that kind of touch on its rules and its world. So I like doing sort of the Stephen King thing of referencing other characters and other pieces in other books, and kind of stringing together slowly a huge universe, which I think is really interesting to do.
Sure. Almost like a Castle Rock type thing with you've got this world and everything kind of bounces off of each other.
Yeah, exactly. And I am I'm about like 38,000 words into a new book that won't probably see the light of day for quite a while, but it's a fantasy set in Hawaii, and it goes back and forth between the first natives the first Polynesians that discovered Hawaii and a contemporary character now visiting and having strange experiences with otherworldly forces that exist at a certain a certain beach there. So
awesome.
So that it should be fun.
Well, excellent. Mike, thank you. I'm looking forward to reading everything new that you have coming out. And again, I highly recommend your books, and I'm excited about your film that's coming out. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Once again, my name is Desiree Duffy. Thank you for being with us today on Books That Make You. You can find out more about Books That Make You on booksthatmakeyou.com, and you can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Until next time, enjoy all the books that make you who you are.
The executive producer for Books That Make You is Desiree Duffy. Produced and sound mastered by Phil Giangrande. Engineering by Dave Nabox. Social media and promotion by Bree Sweeter. For more, visit booksthatmakeyou.com.